Granted, this is a pretty loose interpretation of the word spring. We've now passed false spring and we are well into second winter here. We're not going to wait any longer to do our spring cleaning. I have a whole to-do list of things that we're going to get done, and we're starting with the stash because the situation is dire. And let me open by saying that I'm not here to get into any discourse about what's too much stash. Please don't compare yourself in terms of quantity to what I'm about to show you. The point of this is just that I have figured out for myself the amount of yarn that I can have in my space without feeling any overwhelm. And I know that I'm kind of approaching that point at the moment. So that is what we're going to be working on today. I also do have a somewhat limited amount of space, which also contributes to my wanting to reduce my amount of yarn. I'm not a person who buys a lot of sweater quantities. You can actually probably see behind me the only full sweater quantity that I have at the moment, because normally I will just purchase yarn for my very next big project. And then what I'm going to show you today, which is my stash, is really when there's leftovers. Sometimes that is a full ball, sometimes that's more than that. We'll discuss. Okay, so let me just show you the situation. I bought this bin from IKEA because it is the perfect dimensions to fit in the drawer underneath my nightstand. So in a perfect world, all of my stash that we're discussing would fit in this bin, with the exception of what I have on the pegboard behind me. That we'll talk about another day. I kind of consider that to be my current works in progress and whatever's very next up. Obviously, you can see the first problem here, which is that the lid won't even go on. Let me show you the second problem. Yeah, I feel like this is the issue. If I'm wandering around looking for all of the yarn that I know I have in random places, that is too much and that's getting overwhelming. Random mohair for some reason. Okay. I think that's everything. So you can see the challenge that we have ahead of us, which is that ideally everything you see on your screen will go into this bin. By the way, I'm not going to get into any reviews of this yarn because I recently put out a video where I ranked every yarn that I've ever tried. So what we're going to focus on in this video is more about what I could do with this yarn and whether I am likely to do so, whether I'm excited to do so, and destash things that don't really meet that criteria. Okay, I'm looking for an easy one we can start with. Oh, I did forget something. Okay. Let's start with an easy one. There is yarn in here. There is also a project that I've never showed you on this channel because I started it and then put it away for the season before I started making videos. This is a lot of Sandnesgarn Line. So this is a summer project, but I'm actually hoping to get it back out this spring. So I'm glad that I found it when getting all of this yarn out. This is my pressed flowers. I think it's just called pressed flowers, but it's a shawl. The idea behind this is for it to be kind of like a summer shawl. I'm thinking like cooler nights at the cottage kind of thing. This needs to come out of hibernation quite soon, so I am going to leave it in here and put it up on the pegboard so that I don't forget. Next thing I'm seeing here is 3 nearly full balls of mohair. All 3 of these are Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair, and 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, are from a recently finished object. I made the Kurti sweater. So what I'm gonna do is just we'll make a pile of mohair off to the side. This is Knitting for Olive Merino. That is leftover from the same project. What you'll see here is a lot of leftovers that are enough that I don't want to get rid of them. And what I'm hoping is to kind of group them together for future kind of colorwork scrappy projects. This is sock yarn, again left over from a recent project, so we're talking less than 50 grams here, probably more like 40. So again, would be good in like a colorwork sock, maybe mittens. So I'll start a sock yarn pile somewhere. Okay, let's do this Ziploc next. You can see that I've kind of categorized things in the past, which is why they're in bags. This I think is an easy one. So first thing I have here is more Sandnesgarn Line. This is in the color Matcha. The problem with this is that I did not buy it. Long story short, it was part of a big online order and the store sent me Line instead of Sunday. Totally understandable. There was Line in the same order but in a different color, so it did get confusing. But now I have a basically tank top quantity worth of Sandnesgarn Line, and I'm just not sure that I would make like a tank top in this color. So this might be a D-stash because I feel like there are people who would really love that. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do with the D-stash yarn yet, by the way. I do have some friends who are kind of considering getting into some kind of fiber arts. So I feel like it would be nice to have some yarn around that I could give to people who are in my life and interested in it. The other yarn in here is definitely a D-stash. If you watched my yarn ranking video, you would have seen that I have some like mixed feelings about alpaca. And I think you can really see it in this yarn. Basically, I'm not always a fan of the hairiness of alpaca yarn, and my issue with this one specifically is that the hairiness of it isn't quite the same color as the actual yarn. I remember I tried to use this to make the Barbara shawl, and I held it with Sandnesgarn Sunday. And as I was starting it, I kept thinking there was dog hair on it, and I was like plucking it off. And then I realized it was actually just the alpaca hair. I'd say like hairy rather than fuzzy tends to be my gripe with some alpaca yarns. But yeah, this I don't see myself using in the future, so that's gonna be a D-stash for sure. Okay, and then this one, I did have an idea for. This is Cascade 220 in the color Natural. Now, I have used this yarn in this color twice. I used it for my Esther jacket and my Bit Salmoon vest, and I somehow ended up with 2.5 skeins left over. I think that's another common theme we'll see in this video, is that especially earlier last year, I would kind of err on the side of ordering more yarn rather than less, because I was afraid of playing yarn chicken, especially with the more budget-friendly yarns. I think I was more likely to just like add one to cart, but that's how I end up with situations like this, so I do need to keep that in mind. So with the Cascade 220, I had a thought that it might be fun to try dyeing this. Now, I've never dyed yarn before, but with this natural color, it would obviously be a really fun opportunity. I'm not sure what kind of dye I would like to use. I'm not even sure what color I would want to do. So if you have any experience or ideas, please let me know. But what I was thinking for this was potentially the Jaunty shawl by Andrea Mowry. It's kind of a either half fisherman's rib or brioche, which is a technique that I want to learn, and I think this would be really nice for it. So I'm gonna leave this out because I'm not sure how soon I'll end up dyeing it, but I at least want to remember that it exists, and that brings us to the bin. I think I'm seeing a couple more D-stash ones on top. This is Drops Alaska. I used like 17 balls of this to make a sweater at one point, and I have exactly one left over. This is a great yarn. It's 70 meters to 50 grams. So I'm not sure what I would do with one ball. And I just don't work with Aran weight a ton, so I'm not sure that it would make its way into some kind of like scrappy project, because that would require having more Aran weight yarn. So this might be a D-stash, because I actually think that this would be really nice to hand over to someone who wanted to learn how to knit, because it's like heavy and not very much. This one I've been struggling with for similar reasons. This is Sandnesgarn Poppy, which I really like. Nice and fluffy, very soft, but it's a very specific yarn, and it's in this very specific variegated colorway. So I also don't really see this going into a scrappy project, because I'm not sure what it would go in with. I don't have a ton of like fluffy yarns. So this might be another one in the category of nice to give to someone who's learning. Okay, we have more Drops Alaska actually. So this is the Drops Alaska that I used to make my Staffen vest. And I think what happened here, again, it's a budget yarn, so I was more likely to over purchase. And I think what happened is that I was maybe considering making a full sweater. So what I might have here is like enough for sleeves. Okay, so this is definitely enough for mittens, maybe a hat, probably not both, which is why I've been hanging on to it. But I've never been able to think of like a specific project that I would like to do with this, but it is definitely enough for a full project. So I am gonna hang on to it, but I need to start thinking about what I could do with this. Okay, this one's good. This isn't really stash. This is a bag of leftover materials from finished projects. So like off the top of my head, I'm seeing my Sunday sweater, my camisole number 5. So what this basically is materials to mend garments that I have, which is really nice just for like the sustainability of knitting. This isn't really like an opportunity that you would have with store-bought clothes to have like some of the original materials collected in order to mend them. So this stays with my stash, but it isn't technically stash. Here is more, more Knitting for Olive merino, again, leftovers. I think another leftover problem for me, not really a problem, I shouldn't frame it as a problem, but a reason that I have for leftovers here is color work. Like if I'm using something as a contrast color, I end up with like nearly a full ball left. But I do think that all of these colors look really nice together and I am likely to accumulate more. So I am gonna hang on to the entire pile of Knitting for Olive merino for the purpose of future scrappy color work projects. And I actually think I'm spotting more mohair here. These two are Knitting for Olive. Again, this one is Filcolana Tilia. So again, these are all like a color palette that works great together. So I'm gonna hang on to all of that together and just assume that I will continue to collect similar weights of yarn, and I'll eventually have enough to do like a whole scrappy project. I've been really inspired recently. I've been working on a Zakuri cardigan, and there are a couple of examples of really cool scrappy versions, so it's kind of got me thinking about what I could do eventually once this collection grows. Okay, shall we add to the sock yarn pile maybe? Yes, this is all leftover sock yarn. Oh, hang on, just found more merino. That is more Knitting for Olive merino. So I'm seeing a lot of browns and blues. So sock yarn in this bag, I have 50 grams of Filcolana Arwetta. That is because I had 100 grams and then I surprisingly only needed 50 for the pair of socks that I made, but I don't necessarily think that I could repeat the same process. It was like very surprising and it truly used every inch. So I've kind of been hanging on to the leftover skein thinking that it'll go into a color work project one day, maybe mittens, but I'm not sure what color it would go with. So that will go to the sock yarn pile. This is nearly 50 grams of Lang Yavol. This is between 50 and 100 grams of West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply. And then this, which you can see is a bit of a mess, is a hand-dyed yarn. This is from Amaranth Fibers in the color Blue Roundhead, I believe. So those are all my kind of leftover sock yarns, which again will probably go into color work / scrappy projects one day, but I think I'll have to keep kind of collecting first. Am I gonna have to like shrink wrap this to fit it in the bin? So that's sock yarn. Hopefully there's no more in there. Okay, now we have fingering weight yarn that is not merino, so it does not go into this pile. It's definitely more rustic. So options with this would be mittens, which I love, or I also have a plan this year to do a Fair Isle vest, and these would be really good options for that. The only concern I have, this pile here is Hillesvåg Vilha, which is a Norwegian wool. This one is Jejult Unspinderi Dansk Pelsuld, which is a Danish wool. They're technically both fingering weight, but this one to me worked up more like a sport weight, so I'm not actually sure I could use them together. I'm not sure they go together anyway, so it's not really a big deal, but I am gonna hang on to them for potential future color work projects, which is clearly a theme with everything currently on the desk. By the way, if you see anything here and think, ooh, I know exactly what I would do with that, I'm happy to take suggestions. Okay, this last one is tricky. It is the last one, right? Yeah. This is a yarn that a family member brought back from a trip to Colorado. A little over a year now, probably. This is from Salty Blonde Fine Fibers in their DK base, and the color is the Most Idyllic Setting. It's actually very like earthy and springy. It's got that kind of green and blue, and then there's some like brown and white, which kind of indicates like snow melting, which is lovely. The only issue here is that I don't use a ton of variegated superwash yarn, so I am hanging on to this. I've got about 2 skeins of it, and I'm just kind of keeping an eye out for any patterns that this might be good for. I could also use it for a gift knit, but I couldn't use it for a gift knit for the person who gifted it to me, probably. So there's some strategizing to do there. Okay, now we get to see if this all goes back in the bin. Okay, I'm happy with this. In summary, we've got my new stash, my yarn that I'm going to keep out to consider dyeing, and then this is my de-stash, which is a pretty good amount, but I have somehow used my entire lunch break for this, so we are going to have to come back a different day for day 2. Okay, day 2. The goal for today is what we have behind me. This is my pegboard where I like to keep any current projects in their project bags. I also like to keep any yarn that I am planning to use soon. That way, anything that's kind of up next is sort of within my line of sight fairly regularly. Okay, so from my 2026 plans, we are now nearly a quarter into the year, and I have finished one of the items that I had made as kind of a goal for the year, and then I have started, I think, 2. The one that I've finished is the Curti sweater, which I made based on a Pinterest picture, and I'm really happy with that finished object. Then the next one that I've started is in this project bowl, and this is the first whip from this winter that I will be bringing into the spring, assuming that spring actually happens. This is my Zakuri cardigan, and you can see I'm maybe optimistically more than halfway done. But yeah, really enjoying this process. I'm doing that with Durarium Natura Gilead, which is the recommended yarn. Very happy with that. And then the other one from my 2026 plans that is coming into the spring with me is the January mittens. Now, I did actually finish one pair of mittens in the winter. It was the Effie mittens by Skandir Knits. But this, I currently only have one done, and I've just started the cuff on the second one. As spring is approaching, I've kind of lost motivation for the mittens, but not entirely. So I'm sure that I'll come back to this the next time I'm wanting to do some color work. What I want to talk about today is plans for April, May, June, and July. So we're gonna do kind of a spring-summer plan. And that is what I wanna have on the pegboard behind me. So I'm gonna start by doing a quick tidy up there so that we can make room for my next up plans. I think that that's made enough space. This is going to go away for now. This is my only sweater quantity of yarn at the moment, and it is Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the color Cream. My plan for this is to do the cable jumper that I've got on my 2026 mood board. But that's just such an autumnal project. I could see myself doing it in like August so that it's ready for the fall. but it's not going to be anytime soon. So I'm not going to keep it with my kind of next up project. So the first one we can talk about is one that I kind of have yarn for. This might be confusing. I'm about to show you a finished object. This is the Olives Vest by Pernille Larsen. And I knit this in Sandnesgarn Sunday held double in the color Matcha. And I just don't wear this vest. It's very nice. You can see that like the fabric is lovely. For me, I think it's a combination of two things. I'm not fully comfortable with the color, but I'm also not fully comfortable with the fit. It's a bit more form-fitting than I would like. You can actually see this vest I'm wearing right now. This is the Bit Salmoon vest by Sedna Yang. This is my like ideal fit for a vest. And this one's just like too form-fitting in comparison. And the way I'm thinking about this is that like I would probably like the color if it was in a fit that I enjoyed. And I would probably be okay with the fit if it was in a color that I was really confident in. But I can't like do the two together. Hopefully that makes sense. So my plan for this is to frog it. Once I frog it, it will be fingering weight yarn. I only have half the yarn though, because I do want to get a mohair to hold with it. I think I'm going to get a slightly different color of mohair. And then my plan is to do the Un Sweater Light, which I'm really excited for. And this is such a springy color, which is what I thought last year when I made the vest in the spring. So this spring I will be frogging it and re-knitting it into something that I'll hopefully love. Another project that I've been planning to frog and do something else with, you'll be so proud of me, I did it. This was my Sabai top, and it was done in Lana Grossa Eco Puno in this really pretty kind of like purplish blue color. Very, very nice. I just found that this yarn didn't work great as a summer garment. So my plan with this is to do the Poet Scarf by Sari Nordland. And I'm really excited about that plan. I think I'll definitely be off gauge because that's a DK scarf and I have like a sport weight yarn, but that's okay. So yeah, I've got these two projects that are going to be frogged garments that I'm remaking into something that I'll hopefully love a lot more and get a lot more wear out of. And well, the vest turning into a sweater won't be free because I still need to get the mohair for it, but it still feels like a quite economical way to get a couple of projects in. Okay, let's stay on the theme of sort of finishing projects and being economical. I have the one unfinished object that we found in my stash that is definitely coming out for the spring. I could actually see myself doing this one quite soon. This is the Pressed Flowers shawl, and I just think it's beautiful. These shawls are tricky because if you're not familiar with the construction, they start down here where you can see my waist yarn, and they start with like 4 stitches or something, and then with every pattern repeat, you get so many more stitches, and you can see how many I've got on right now. So it gets more and more time consuming as you go. So I may be more than halfway done, but it's honestly kind of hard to tell. Okay, and the next one that I'll put in the let's call it knitting admin. So one of the yarns that we found in my stash was Drops Alaska, which I had used to make this Staffen vest. Don't worry, I'm not going to frog this. I really like this vest. However, again, the one that I'm wearing today is like my ideal fit for a vest. What I really like about it is that it almost has a cap sleeve. And what that means is that the shape of it ends up not being like a total box, but kind of going in a bit. Really like that shape. This doesn't quite have that. I can't remember if this is due to the pattern or due to me being a little lazy, but the sort of armhole ribbing is quite short. This looks like I only did like maybe 6 or 7 rounds. And same thing with the neck actually. So I'm thinking of using some of the yarn that I have left over to rip out all of the ribbing, redo it, make it look nicer, and also have it be longer in probably all 3 of those to kind of improve the fit. I think this will be a good project the next time that I want just like a quick win because I'm not doing the actual Staffen part of the Staffen. The second reason that I'm eager to do this is that when I originally made this, it was probably like exactly a year ago. I was still pretty new to knitting. And I was in this phase where I hadn't figured out how to do like tidy ribbing. I figured that out actually around the time that I did this bit salmoon. But since I couldn't do tidy ribbing, I was doing twisted rib for like absolutely everything. And I do like twisted rib, but I feel like there's a time and a place for it, and I don't love it on this garment. Okay, so I've got that yarn in here. I've also got that Cascade 220 that we found in my stash, and I again want to leave that out in my line of sight because I at least want to start thinking about dyeing it and what color I might want to use for it. So that will be staying out. Now let's talk about the 3 garment plans that I think are next up for me, but I don't have yarn for yet. The first one I do have the pattern for though. This is the Daruma pattern book number 8. I had to order this online from like eBay or Etsy, and it shipped from Japan. The pattern is not in English. The book is not in English. It is only in Japanese. My plan is to make the sailor collar pullover, which is the pattern on the cover. I just think that it's beautiful. That oversized fit is exactly my preference, and that ribbing detail is just beautiful. So I'm really excited about this. I actually, just how my brain works, I think that's going to be a really fun challenge to see that if I can make this mostly based on the charts and also making use of, you know, all the modern translation tools that we have these days. I think it'll be fun to see if I can do that. There's some other really nice patterns in here too. So if all goes well, I could see myself doing more than one. Like, look at those socks. That is so neat. So my plan for this is to have it be kind of like a spring garment, spring or fall. And I'm thinking of doing like a cotton merino to make that happen. And I'm thinking of doing it in navy. I'll probably be shopping for this quite soon. Now, the project that I'm thinking is going to be my April project is, I actually haven't decided on a pattern yet. I'm thinking of self-drafting something. One of the projects on my 2026 plans was to do like a cabled vest, sort of like the one I'm wearing, but button-up. So like V-neck button-up vest. And I've spent so much time looking at patterns, and there are some really nice ones, but I don't know if any of them are like exactly what I want. A couple of options, if you're interested in the same style, would be the Haru vest. I think that's by Knits by Summer. And the Lauder by Rebecca Clow, that actually doesn't come in like a button-up V-neck vest, but there is like a cardigan version and a V-neck vest option, so it wouldn't be hard to like modify it to kind of mash the two together. So those are the 2 options I've kind of been considering, but at this point, I'm actually thinking of self-drafting something. I do get like really picky about cable patterns, and if I want to like incorporate some of my own patterns, I just kind of think, oh, I'll do it myself. But I have decided on the yarn for it. So what I want to use is Tin Pure Gint by Sandnes Garn, held with a mohair. I used this combination for my Brady loop sweater, and I really liked it because the Tin Pure Gint has like a lot of structure to it for the cables, but then the mohair gives it some drape, which is really nice. So I think for a cabled vest, that'll be really nice. The other thing I've decided on is that I want it to be a dark gray, like dark, dark gray, almost black. I'm really into dark cables. I mean, I obviously love the cream ones as well, where you can like see every detail, but I also really love these cabled garments where it's like the light has to hit it the right way in order to like see all the detail. I just think it's really neat. I'm only planning to do one summer top this year. I think that I just don't get quite as much wear out of them, but they are quite fun still. I want to do the Mixed Rib Tank by Florence Miller, which is a very popular summer pattern. It looks really, really nice. And I'm actually thinking of using the exact same yarn from her sample, which is Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Dusty Aqua, which is a color I've been wanting to use for a while from Knitting for Olive. And I just think that it happens to match my entire color palette very well. So I might just go with that. Although I could also see myself going with another like dark gray. I think that would be fun. So need to get yarn for that as well. But those are what I think are going to be my next 4 garment projects. So that's the cable vest, the Un sweater light, the sailor collar pullover, and the mixed rib top. So I think that that is all of my knitting plans going into summer, which is wild. Now we can quickly discuss some sewing plans too, because with spring coming, I can kind of feel the sewing mojo coming back. For context, I'm definitely like a knitter who sews on the side rather than like a sewist who also knits, if that makes sense. And I'm definitely more seasonal about it. Mostly my sewing ends up being doing bottoms to match the knitted tops that I have. For example, the pants I'm wearing now are the Pomona pants by Anna Allen Clothing in a linen. These are a very beginner-friendly pattern if anybody else is like a knitter looking to get into sewing. Okay, so the first plan is actually something that I wanted to do months ago. This is my knitting needle case, which I made myself. You can see it is sure not perfect. I didn't do a fantastic job with the binding on it, but that's actually not why I want to replace it. Main reason is that it doesn't really fit all of my needles. If I open it, you can kind of see that there's multiple sets sharing the same slots. The other main reason is that the closure on this, I never use it. I'm sure I'm supposed to tie it in like a pretty bow and I just don't. So I'd like to replace this. I'm also thinking of doing like a quilted version of it. I think that would give it like some nice structure. I even went to the trouble of like drawing out my own pattern to make this thing, and then I simply never did it. I even have the fabric for it. So I've got these 2 fabrics. The sort of mint color one is Fabulism cotton, which is gorgeous. And then I believe that this one is Rifle Paper Co. I just got these both at a local fabric store. Yeah, plan number 1 is to replace my knitting needle case. Plan number 2, this is my entire fabric stash. These are both from Blackbird Fabrics. I got them both last year and just never got around to them last sewing season, as it were. So this one is just a plain linen. I think it's their everyday linen in navy. And then this one is a cotton linen blend in black. So I've got enough of these to make, I think I was originally planning on dresses. But the more I've been thinking about it, I think I'll probably do pants. I haven't fully decided on patterns or which patterns to go with which fabric, but some that I am considering. I've done the Pomona pants before. I've also done the Lane pants before. Both fantastic options. A couple that I've never made that I'm considering for a little bit of interest here. There's the Helios by Indigo Indigo, which I think would be really nice maybe in the black to do like really comfy, almost trouser looking pants. And then I'm thinking in the navy, there's the Kite pants by Matchy Matchy Sewing Club, which have kind of like a barrel leg shape. So I think that that might be a nice bit of interest. So yeah, those are all of my sewing plans for the spring summer season. To be fair, that's just using the fabric that I have. I could see myself getting a bit more fabric and maybe doing a skirt. I've been looking at a few gingham options, which I think would be fun.